The world is awash in capital. There's been such a transfer of wealth to the top 2-3 percentile. And then what are they, as you said, you can't just sit on this wealth, you got to do something with it.
Yeah.
So talk a bit about this.
Well, that's actually been a very problematic thing, because this is the end result of, what you see is a manifestation, increasing inequality. And what you have, for example, in the United States is depressed average wages. And for most people, the real wages haven't gone up or actually have gone down. But the fact of the matter is, in a country where 2/3 of the economy or more is driven by consumer demand, you need to have that demand. And if people don't earn enough money, they're not going to have that demand. So a serious problem is, as more and more wealth gets concentrated at the top, and we all know, the lower income you have, the higher percentage of that income you actually spend, because you have to fulfill your needs. As more and more income is concentrated upwards, it means that a smaller proportion is recycled into the economy as consumption, and more of it is put in assets, because these people save. The richer you are, the greater the percentage of your income you save. And if there are only a limited number of assets available to invest in, these savings flowing into the assets inflates the prices of these assets at the same time as aggregate demand in the economy is getting depressed.
Okay, break that down into simple language. Give with housing perhaps as an example.
Well, the simple language is people simply are not earning enough wages to spend enough money, and the only way people were sustaining themselves and their lifestyles was by borrowing against the assets, houses, where the prices were rising because of a lot of investment coming in from the top income groups. So it was not a sustainable system, and it's a bad substitute for having a fair wage distribution system where everybody has enough purchasing power, everybody has, and it's a long-term aggregate, sustainable rate of growth.
He said organization wins championships. I said, I didn't see organization playing with the flu in Utah. I didn't see him playing with, with the bad ankle. Granted, I think organizations put together teams, but at the end of the day, the teams got to go out and play. So in essence, I think the players win the championship, and the organization has something to do with it. Don't get me wrong, but don't try to put the organization above the players, because at the end of the day, the players still got to go out there and perform. You guys got to pay us, but I still got to go out and play.
A man who married Theo van Gogh, who was on welfare, based on that principle, 26-year-old, healthy young man. And what I took from that, and I think what many Dutch people learned from that, is he had the time to plot a murder, which in the United States he would not be. He would be busy trying to feed himself and find a roof over his head.
You cannot economically just tax one portion of the population and not expect it to harm everyone else. So those people at the quote-unquote top 1%, or whatever you're saying, or you're just taxing the top, you can just make up whatever number it is. They employ people, and they make money because they provide goods and services that people want for a variety of other things. And this idea that you can just, there's an endless amount of money at the top and we can just keep taking it from them, eventually a lot of them are just going to take longer vacations and they're not going to work as long.
Property, the domination of man's needs, the denial of the right to satisfy his needs. Time was when property claimed a divine right, when it came to man with the same refrain, even as religion: sacrifice, abnegate, submit. The spirit of anarchism has lifted man from his prostrate position. He now stands erect, with his face toward the light. He has learned to see the insatiable, devouring, devastating nature of property, and he is preparing to strike the monster dead. Property is robbery, said the great French anarchist Proudhon. Yes, but without risk and danger to the robbery. Monopolizing the accumulated efforts of man, property has robbed him of his birthright and has turned him loose, a pauper, an outcast. Property is not even the time-worn excuse that man does not create enough to satisfy all needs. The ABC student of economics knows that the productivity of labor within the last few decades far exceeds normal demand. But what are normal demands to an abnormal institution? The only demand that property recognizes is its own gluttonous appetite for greater wealth, because wealth means power. The power to subdue, to crush, to exploit, the power to enslave, to outrage, to degrade. America is particularly boastful of her great power, her enormous national wealth. Poor America, of what avail is all her wealth if the individuals comprising the nation are wretchedly poor? If they live in squalor and filth and crime, with hope and joys gone, a homeless, soilless army of human prey. It is generally conceded that unless the returns of any business venture exceed the cost, bankruptcy is inevitable. But those engaged in the business of producing wealth have not yet learned even this simple lesson. Every year the cost of production in human life is growing larger. 50,000 killed, 100,000 wounded in America last year. The returns to the masses who helped create the wealth are ever getting smaller. Yet America continues to be blind to the inevitable bankruptcy of our business of production. Nor is this the only crime of the latter. Still more fatal is the crime of turning the producer into a mere particle of a machine, with less will and decision than his master of steel and iron. Man is being robbed not merely of the products of his labor, but of the power of free initiative, of originality, and the interest in or desire for the things he is making. Real wealth consists in things of utility and beauty, in things that help to create strong, beautiful bodies and surroundings inspiring to live in. But if man is doomed to wind cotton around a spool, or dig coal, or build roads for 30 years of his life, there can be no talk of wealth. What he gives to the world is only gray and hideous things, reflecting a dull and hideous existence, too weak to live, too cowardly to die. Strange to say, there are people who extol this deadening method of centralized production as the proudest achievement of our age. They fail utterly to realize that if we are to continue in machine subserviency, our slavery is more complete than was our bondage to the king. They do not want to know that centralization is not only the death knell of liberty, but also of health and beauty, of art and science, all these being impossible in a clock-like, mechanical atmosphere. Anarchism cannot but repudiate such a method of production. Its goal is the freest possible expression of all the latent powers of the individual. Oscar Wilde defines a perfect personality as, quote, one who develops under perfect conditions, who is not wounded, maimed, or in danger, end quote. A perfect personality, then, is only possible in a state of society where man is free to choose the mode of work, the conditions of work, and the freedom to work. One to whom the making of a table, the building of a house, or the tilling of the soil is what the painting is to the artist and the discovery to the scientist. The result of inspiration, of intense longing, and deep interest in work as a creative force. That being the ideal of anarchism, its economic arrangements must consist of voluntary productive and distributive associations, gradually developing into free communism, as the best means of producing with the least waste of human energy. Anarchism, however, also recognizes the right of the individual, or numbers of individuals, to arrange at all times for other forms of work in harmony with their tastes and desires. Such free display of human energy being possible only under complete individual and social freedom, anarchism directs its forces against the third and greatest foe of all social equality, namely, the state, organized authority, or statutory law, the dominion of human conduct. Just as religion has fettered the human mind, and as property, or the monopoly of things, has subdued and stifled man's needs, so has the state enslaved his spirit, dictating every phase of conduct. Quote, all government, in essence, says Emerson, is tyranny, end quote. It matters not whether it is government by divine right or majority rule. In every instance, its aim is the absolute subordination of the individual. Referring to the American government, the greatest American anarchist David Thoreau said, quote, government, what is it but a tradition, though a recent one, endeavoring to transmit itself unimpaired to posterity, but each instance losing its integrity. It is not the vitality and force of a single living man. Law never made man a whit more just, and by means of their respect for it, even the well-disposed are daily made agents of injustice. End quote. Indeed, the keynote of government is injustice. With the arrogance and self-sufficiency of the king who could do no wrong, governments ordain, judge, condemn, and punish the most insignificant offenses, while maintaining themselves by the greatest of all offenses, the annihilation of individual liberty. Thus, Ouida is right when she maintains that, quote, the state only aims at instilling those qualities in its public by which its demands are obeyed, and its exchequer is filled. Its highest attainment is the reduction of mankind to clockwork. In its atmosphere, all those finer and more delicate liberties, which require treatment and spacious expansion, inevitably dry up and perish. The state requires a tax-paying machine in which there is no hitch, an exchequer in which there is never a deficit, and a public monotonous, obedient, colorless, spiritless, moving humbly like a flock of sheep along a straight high road between two walls. End quote. Yet even a flock of sheep would resist the chicanery of the state, if it were not for the corruptive, tyrannical, and oppressive methods it employs to serve its purposes. Therefore, Bakunin repudiates the state as synonymous with the surrender of the liberty of the individual or small minorities, the destruction of social relationship, their curtailment or complete denial even of life itself for its own aggrandizement.